So as I said, I'm really looking forward to our next storyteller. So please welcome Wendy B.
Hello.
Hey, Wendy.
So one day, in another time and another place, my parents packed me, my two sisters, and my brother into our orange VW van with flower decals all over it. We were heading to what we knew as Horton's Rock, a huge outcrop of granite several hours away from where we lived in Ibadan, Nigeria. As we traveled, we sang, "The bear went over the mountain, the bear went over the mountain, the bear went over the mountain. And what do you think he saw? He saw another mountain, he saw," etc. Well, it happened to be April 1st, April Fool's Day. So we, all four of us kids, were laughing in the back of the car about who would make a fool out of who. We did this for a while, and then suddenly my father turned to us and he said, "Well, you know, on April Fool's Day, you only get to fool someone before noon. If it's afternoon, you're the fool." So we went, "Daddy." Finally, after hours in the car, we turned down a dirt road and after a few bumpy miles, arrived at our destination. We piled out of the car onto a red laterite road banded by a tangle of thick leaves and leggy branches. We walked a few steps when our leader turned quickly left into what seemed to be the heart of a large bush. He fished around for a rope made out of several strands of plaited vine. He grabbed a hold of it and he pulled himself up through the foliage. We all followed, and there, looming above us, was the rock, a massive mound of sheer granite. We started to walk up. The sun was beating down on our heads, and the coarse rock was eating through our flip-flops, and it seemed to go on forever. And every time we thought we'd reached the top, another hillock appeared ahead. The bear went over the mountain, the bear went over the mountain. Finally, late morning, we reached the peak. I never really liked those family road trips. It was too long in the car. It was too hot. So I didn't like walking up mountains. But this trip was different. I'd recently learned in school that the hyrax, which is a small rodent-like creature, was the closest living relative to an elephant. It seemed absurd. It seemed absurd to me, but I wanted to see one, preferably in the wild, to check out for myself. And I had heard that hyraxes could be found on Horton's Rock. So while my parents were setting up a picnic lunch, I snuck off in search of a hyrax. I rounded the hilltop, dropped down a bit, and found what I was looking for. It was a cave, which I could see was deep and dark and almost certainly housed hyraxes. I walked in the entrance. The 100-degree heat was replaced with deep, cool, dank dampness, an unmistakable smell of animal droppings. I took a few steps in, then a few more, then dropped to my knees as the cave narrowed. Then from my knees, I lay on my stomach, pulling myself forward with my forearms, knowing that I was about to find a hyrax. Then suddenly a shiver ran through my body. It was cold, but I was scared. Gotta get out of the cave. I backed out. I turned around. I pulled myself forward with my arms. I realized that there was a small crevice in the floor of the cave, which I must have climbed over without noticing in my excitement on the way in. I got ready to get across it. I looked down and I saw a cobra, coiled, ready to strike. I froze. I yelled, "Daddy!" My father called back, "It's afternoon. You can't fool us. You're the fool." I realized, knowing that I was on my own. I was gripped by fear. There was no way out. I had to face down this thing alone. I looked down. The snake wasn't moving. I looked at his eyes. There was no glint there. I realized the snake was dead. Someone had placed it there, perhaps in some kind of juju, perhaps some kind of magic, and I had, in my search for something else, come upon it. My panic subsided. My heart rate went down. I scrambled over the crevice, pulled myself through the dark towards the light at the opening of the cave, and I walked out. I sat down with my family and ate lunch. Nothing further was said. Now, since then, I've seen many elephants. I've ridden elephants. I think elephants are beautiful creatures, but I've never seen a hyrax in the wild. I've never gone in search of a hyrax again, and I probably never will. And I still think it is absurd that it is the closest living relative of the elephant. What I do know, what echoes down to me from those few moments in that dark cave, is that whenever you see, feel, taste fear, face it down, look it right in the eye, and you'll often find that the thing you are afraid of is not as bad as you thought it would be. I'm Wendy B, signing off.